Ankit Nayal, everyone, is the visionary founder and CEO of, is it Flamme? How do you pronounce the name,
Flame.
Ankit?
We just call it a flame. There's a story behind that as well. But flame.
Just play. Okay, but with two M's. Just
Yes.
kind of like Flamme, because we've got a bit of French in there as well. Founder and CEO of Flame, the couples app. He's also a seasoned mentor for prominent accelerators like Techstars that you might have heard of and India Accelerator. We're going to be deep diving into his entrepreneurial journey that led Flame to achieve industry leading retention rates. In fact, Ankit was just mentioning his skyrocketing high retention rate. So that's a huge achievement and has garnered attention from global platforms including TechCrunch, Harvard Crimson, The Guardian, and NY Weekly. A little bit more about Ankit, just to get everyone kind of warmed up. He's recognized for his strategic brilliance and operational expertise. Ankit, you're not going to be able to walk out the door with all these
It's like
accolades and
I'm
compliments.
cringing. I'm cringing hearing all these accolades. It's like when you hear your
This
own
is
accolades
like
and someone else selling that.
accolade. I always make my guests feel so good about themselves. He's not only engineered a leading product in the competitive tech landscape, but also played a pivotal role in scaling a European hardware as a service startup. This I find really interesting as well, from a $40 million Series B to a staggering $200 million Series C. For anyone who might not be familiar with the whole like venture capital VC landscape, so VC stands for venture capital investors that back scalable, huge tech businesses. And usually it starts every round of fundraise has a label. So you've got like pre-seed, seed, series A, B, C, D, and it goes on from there. So Ankit took his from Series B to Series C, which is incredible. And lastly, his diverse experience spans building and exiting a consumer business in China with remarkable success, illustrating his adeptness in navigating complex markets and fostering substantial growth. Everyone, can we get emoji applause for Ankit Nayal in today's One Day Community Chat? Woo! Yeah, all right. I think we've got some, I hope you've all got some popcorn for today's chat. All right, Ankit, I have loads that I want to ask you. Loads. All right, but we're going to kick off with something that piqued my curiosity when I was checking out your profile. So you said that you hacked your first system when you were 12. What is the story there?
Hey, thank you, Stephanie, for the multitude of introductions and making sure I kept blushing until I turned purple. So getting it brilliantly there. Just like hearing one thing after another, and then like it happens. But no, good way to start the whole thing, right? Going in chronological order. So when I was back 12, um, we were quite young then, right? Back in the days, and I was living in India. We didn't have a PC at home. So the only place you could actually use a personal computer was when you went to the computer lab in the school. And every week for a couple of hours, you would be allowed to go in there to learn how to use Excel, how to use Word, how to use all the tools, etc. So I remember this time, right? We were there and we discovered that apart from Excel and Word and PowerPoint, there's also this thing called Counter-Strike, which you can play with your friends, which is quite a fun and engaging thing to do. But the issue was that we had to go to an internet cafe to play it outside, as the school's internet cafe or the computer lab was blocked. And me being me, I figured out, going on blogs, going on multiple channels, I tried to figure out, oh, how could I actually end up cracking this firewall? How could we actually play Counter-Strike while in the computer lab? Um, and the end solution was I figured out we could install a VPN, bypass the security protocols, and we could enjoy Counter-Strike during our study hours in the computer lab. But that was the story of hacking the first system. It was for personal purposes, as we see, but I quite enjoyed it.
Thank you. That is fascinating. What I'm taking away from that is, I mean, number one, just your sheer intelligence, right? Like, what other 12-year-old boy is going to figure out this hacking the system at that age? And I think something that's really interesting here is motivation. So I actually just got off an interesting, one-to-one with one of my founders in the cohort one day, and I was like, look, I'm just hearing excuse after excuse. Like, if you were actually motivated, if you actually wanted to, you find a way. And so this 12-year-old boy obviously wanted to play video games, if I understood
Yes.
correctly, right?
Yes.
No, no way to motivate a 12-year-old boy than video game.
I agree. I agree with that.
I love that. I love that. All right. So I was really curious to learn about the story behind that. By the way, everyone, welcome, welcome. I've just popped a few messages in the chat. I forgot to say before, we'll be collecting feedback afterwards. There's a fun quiz. So please stay tuned. Listen to Ankit's amazing story because we'll see who gets the highest score on the quiz. And of course, any questions as we're going through today's discussion, please pop them in the chat and we'll get around to them in the Q&A. Back to you, Ankit. So let's fast forward. You're saying the chronological timeline. I'm not going to go 13 years old, 14 years old. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, if you don't mind. I'm sure you have lots of other interesting stories from
18
that
was a
era.
fun year as well.
Which one, sorry?
18.
All right, what happened at 18?
Class
That's
making. So
different.
you're on the. Yeah, that's a different chat.
That's a different interview. Okay, we'll park that one for now. All right, so let's fast forward to Flame, your app. Give us the elevator pitch and tell us what was the genesis for Flame?
It's interesting, right? Basically, the elevator pitch for Flame is we help couples who are disconnected connect better using gamified healthy habits and an AI coach. But then there was much more that went on behind that, right? I worked as a couples coach in China when I had my wellness business as well. And I realized that coaching, even though it was really effective, had three issues around it. One, it was quite expensive. Like a coaching session can be anywhere between $100 to $200, which is quite expensive. Second, it has limited accessibility, could be geographical constraint, time constraints, etc. And then third, it has stigma attached, right? It's not something uh, people are not very upfront with it, or people only want to go to coaching when they feel broken, quote unquote, but that's not the case. So I noticed these three problems and I figured that, hey, there must be a fun way to make this accessible to more people. And that's when we started working on Flame. Basically, what we do at Flame is we created these habit loops around the app using Duolingo's methodology. And using them, you're able to get the people back on board and then ensure that there's an AI coach in place for them to get the help they need.
Nice, very succinct elevator pitch. And so what was the genesis for the idea for Flame?
I think it was kind of around the time when combination of two things, right? One, of me being a couples coach, and I noticed there was this gap in the market. And then the second was I lived in 4 to 5 different countries, and I realized that there were so many apps to help you find a partner, right? If I ask anyone in the audience right now, there's Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, Grinder, etc. So many other apps. But then once you've actually found a partner, once you're in love with them, there's nothing to actually help them build that relationship further, carry it on, connect those bonds. Also, I mean, Stephanie, in today's world right now, Gen Z spends more than 4 hours every day on social media. And now this leads to unrealistic expectations, right? You go on social media, you're like, oh, my life should be this perfect vision of what I see online. Might be in the gym, might be in your relationship, etc. But then when you actually go into a relationship, you realize that, oh, that's not the case. And then you get surprised, like, why is that so? I saw online that it was supposed to be perfect, no fights, we go on travels, we have a beautiful life, but that doesn't happen. And I feel that it's a responsibility at Flame to help people navigate this relationship challenge, and that's what we try to help them do.
I love that so much. I feel like it's something that most of us can resonate with, even regardless of demographic generation. But you throw the Gen Z social media statistic into the mix, and it heightens that need to focus on, love the one that you're with even more. So, especially where you've got the Tinder gamification, swipe left, swipe
Yeah.
right, it's just kind of like, you have an argument or you get fed up with someone. Oh, so it's kind of like this disposable, unhealthy attitude that's been cultivated by these other apps, right? So I think that this speaks to the high retention rates that you have at Flame. So I mentioned them in the intro. Your investors have been very impressed, or potential investors have been very impressed with these metrics. What's that down to? Is that down to the quality of the product market fit? Can you talk to us a little bit about how you've achieved
Yeah.
such high retention?
It was a fun journey as well, but yeah, I'll try to keep it short. Also, another thing I realized is you said my answers were succinct, and I realized that's built out of talking with so many investors because investors, if you keep on talking, you end up fluffing things up, and they like when you're really short and crisp with things.
I
And that's
love
why I
that.
noticed actually my business, pitches have changed to be like, okay, ABCD, done. To building on the retention, what it is a long story behind that as well, right? But then we got the initial product launch was in 2022. We got invited by TechCrunch Disrupt as a startup battlefield. So we went all the way to San Francisco. We are lugging our bags. We're like, oh, this is the dream come true. Look at us, go to Silicon Valley. And then we launched the first product there, which was a date planning app. Now, sounds cool, right? Once we launched the product, we were like, oh, this is a hit. TechCrunch is featuring us. This is going to be the time of our life. You're going to get 5 million in funding tomorrow. This is all set. Wasn't the case. Wasn't the case. That's how it happens in the movies. Didn't happen in real life. We launched the product. We got a good initial user base of 500 to 1,000 people initially on board. And then we realized that there was no value in the product. There was no one using it. There was a 30-day retention was at 5% or so, which I think is quite low by industry standards using any benchmark. So we were like, okay, what shall we do right now? And then, you can call it luck, good luck or bad luck, but we got hit by a cease and desist from a US conglomerate. A $300 million company comes after us. They're like, okay, you're using this name. This name is under our brand and our trademark. You can't use it. And it was a very stressful time. But along with that, I realized maybe this is an opportunity, right? If the product is not working, maybe this is a chance for us to be like, okay, we're going to take it down because of the cease and desist and then work on rebuilding it. So that's what we did. We took the product down in November, went back into rebuilding, and then December, January, did a lot of user research, built it again, and came back in February with a rebuilt product, which we launched on Valentine's Day, of course. And then something interesting that happened in the product as well. It was an AI coach, and we put it out there, but we realized that people were still not using it, the AI coach, but they were using this other feature on the app, which was a daily question, right? So we started digging a bit deeper. We were like, okay, this is the value people are getting off it. This is why they're using it. So we took that one star feature or core game mechanic, as it's called, and then we gamified the shit out of it. Like you name it, streaks, notification, having the answer from your partner, everything. We put that into place. And this is how I think we were able to build the retention by identifying what is the core of the product and then building on top of it. So our metric shifted from 25% day 30 to 45% day 30. And that's what we're sitting at
Wow.
right now.
Wow, Ankit, that is so fascinating. What a great story. I love that you shared that with the group here because my podcast is called Strategy and Tragedy for a reason, right? Like these things don't all work out. I love how you described it. It wasn't like the movies. You go off to San Fran, you get all this money and like cool, your bob's away. So I think there's lots of lessons there to share with the group here as well, just to underscore nice, short and succinct kind of elevator pitches, particularly for investors. You don't know if your first product is going to be the thing that actually works. As you say, you kind of launch with something and then you got to observe the users, see how they engage with it, and then gamify the shit out of the one
Yep.
feature that they love.
That's the trick. That's the trick. Gamify the shit out of it.
Gamify the shit out of it. That's the winning strategy. Amazing. I think also just to also mention on the cease and desist front, it's interesting you mentioned that as well because I know firsthand a number of businesses who have come off much better out of a cease and desist. So that's a true example where in crisis lies opportunity, right? Which I put in the chat there. Okay, amazing. So you mentioned TechCrunch, which was the Disrupt competition that you went off to in San Francisco. TechCrunch is also, a media publication. It's a media title. We mentioned in the intro as well some of the great PR press coverage that you've got with Flame. How did that happen? Was that through TechCrunch? Did that get your foot in the door, or did you do any cool tactics?
I think the two things in play there, right? One, the organizer behind TechCrunch Disrupt. I took them to Chipotle after the event, and they tried Chipotle for the first time with me. It was this is how relationships are built, right? Over Chipotle, having a burrito over there. So that was one of the key hacks. And the second thing I think what we did is once these relationships were built, we realized that PR is about momentum and getting that initial foot in through the door. So we begged a lot initially, and we asked everyone we knew, including TechCrunch, including EU startups, including everyone else we could get out to. Hey, could you put us out there? We're doing this really cool thing. Gen AI is coming out. We're also building something in the AI space. Um, and that's how, when we launched initially on Valentine's Day last year, we got a big footprint on the PR space. And what we realize is once you get this foot in, then other media start picking you up, and then other people start featuring you, and then the word
Yeah.
gets out. But I will have to agree that the initial, getting a foot in through the door is quite hard. if you have connections already, it makes it easier. But man, I'm a kid from India who, went to China, started something there, and then decided to leave his network completely behind, come to Europe, and then move to the US. I didn't have any existing network. I literally had to use the beg approach where I just go and ask people, hey, we are doing something really cool. Would you like to put us out there?
Yeah, no, you're preaching to the choir there, Anki. I totally get that. So was that first foot in the door, was that TechCrunch you took out for the Chipotle? And then were they the first title to give you some press coverage last year when you launched? So that was also, I think what's interesting there is to highlight that was also nurtured over the course of how long, of like a year? How long was that?
I mean, 6 months or so. 6 months or so, you have to keep building that relationship. Also, I like the guy, right? I like the guy. So I'm sending messages every now and then. He was in a relationship. I was like, hey, how's it going with the partner? Is there any way I can help? Is there any way we can contribute? And that is
Right.
what led to it.
Oh, that's so cute. So you almost kind of converted this contact, as a customer, as an early advocate anyway. So, you've really got him bought in for real.
But it was the Chipotle. So it was the Chipotle.
But just to clarify, it wasn't how great our product or core value proposition was. It was the Chipotle. By the way, gang, this one day community event is sponsored by Chipotle. You'll get free
Yeah,
nachos
there we
after
go.
this. We need to get onto that. Amazing. I love that. And I think what's interesting there with the FOMO strategy, right? So you said that that's what works with PR. Do you remember who who were the fast followers after TechCrunch? Do you remember who came next? And then how did the snowball get rolling?
I remember, yeah, good question. So I remember that initially when we put out, once let me close the window, yeah, initially when we got out in TechCrunch, after that, smaller media outlets started picking us up. And I think that there's an automatic chain which runs in. Once you get on a big media outlet, smaller ones start picking you up. And then because you get more press coverage, something interesting what we have been delving with, right? SEO. So what ends up happening is your website gets boosted further, which results in you getting in front of more and more people. So I think the second one to reach out after that was Harvard Crimson. They were putting out an article on their platform for, I think, the top app for Harvard graduates or something.
Wow,
And
amazing. Yeah, and then it just snowballs from there, right?
snowballs.
Boost your SEO,
Yeah.
gives you more credibility. I love that. Um, I've definitely witnessed that same FOMO strategy, that FOMO approach work very, very well with investors,
Yeah.
particularly angel investors. There's a funny story I always remember where this guy, he got a little bit of money and he told me it was like £1,000 angel investor check, and he didn't tell other people how much they put in, but they just said, oh, this guy's backing this guy, and then two turned into four, four turns into eight. Was that anything similar there for you, Ankit, with the investor piece as well as the PR, leveraging that FOMO?
So I think we didn't, well, I wasn't able to use it for investors at that point just because I was not aware. I was stepping into, I had a business before in China, but it was a bootstrap business and we scaled it to quite a big amount of revenue. That was all cool, but it wasn't working on the VC timelines. And we realized that VCs operate differently, right? As you know, VCs are so much about FOMO and what you can generate and what you can do. But last year, when we went fundraising, I used a slightly different approach. And this is a secret I haven't shared anywhere, right? So you guys are going to love this. And we going out there, right? And we're like, hey, initially we don't have any traction. What do we do? Traction in terms of investment. So what I did is started contacting my founder friends or people I knew. I'm like, what do you think about me putting a name on the pitch deck? You invested in us. If someone reaches out, just tell them, hey, yeah, I gave them a small check, $500, $1,000, doesn't even matter. We get your name in there. And then I set up this email automation campaign in which I'd be like, first week, we are raising around, and then 5 days later, oh yeah, we got these investors on board. Third email, we got these investors on board as well. And then people suddenly were like, first email, no one replies. Second email, they're like, oh, what is happening here? Third email, they're like, oh, we want to be a part of this. So that's something cool I realized with the FOMO part. I realized
Yeah.
investment or like raising money is so much about the FOMO you can generate, right? With whatever you have. Like you could have nothing and you could still generate FOMO, and you could have everything and not generate FOMO.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's all about how you kind of whip everyone up into a bit of a frenzy, how you generate that interest. You've also reminded me as well. So over here in the UK, there's the TV show called Dragon's Den. In America,
Right.
it's Shark Tank. I'm sure some of you will be familiar. And in some of the other podcast interviews, the founders, they witnessed a similar spike in web traffic when the investors on the show would say, "Yeah, I'll make you an offer. I'll make it," and it was timed exactly to on TV when they say, "Yeah, I want to back you. I'll make you an offer." The website traffic increases. So whether you're an investor, a journalist, an editor, or just a casual Shark Tank or Dragon's Den viewer, there is that psychology that works on all of us, and it's I think it is reasonable because we need something to trust. I think especially with startups, it's like you're selling on a vision and a dream, right? So you're leaning on each other to be like, can I trust this? Especially where money's concerned, right, Ankit?
What's interesting is I compare it to dating quite a lot, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I've worked in this space
right.
quite a lot and I realized dating is kind of similar. You need to make sure you're available, but you're not available. You're out there, but you're not out there, you know? So investment works kind of similar. You need to
Right.
be there, but you're not there. You're not available, but you're still available if they want to put in some money.
Yeah, it would be available, just not too available.
Yeah, exactly.
All
Exactly.
right. So we touched on, we're touching on kind of the investor thing. That's interesting. Thank you for the 1 day exclusive on your strategy
Because,
there with the
yeah.
email chain. That's interesting. So I mentioned how fascinated I was in your intro with that Series B to Series C. So this was with a previous company, right, Ankit?
This was with the previous company.
This is the European hardware as a
Yeah.
service. Are you able to share what company that was?
Yeah, it was Everphone. It was based in Berlin, and I started working with them in the middle of my MBA. I came in as a growth operator, working directly with the COO, so it's kind of like his right hand man.
Right.
And I mean, I was not fundraising in that company. My main role was to make sure while they were scaling from Series B to C, like the kind of thing when you're running a company, you tell others what to do by telling them what to do when you're in the early stages. But then as things move along, as you're like a 50, 100, 200 people, you suddenly realize that, oh, that doesn't really work because person A tells person B something, person B tells person C something, person C tells person D. And then by the time it gets to D, it's a different process. It's not the same thing anymore. So
Yeah.
I came in the organization and I helped establish the standard operating procedures, make sure that everything was working smoothly. So I was working directly hand in hand with the COO and making sure that we were putting oil in the right places, structure in there, putting the gears where they're supposed to be, and making sure it was all documented.
That is super interesting. And just on that point with the cascade of communication, when you get to that bigger company size, what worked for you there in terms of communicating across? Because what you're saying about person B, person C, D, I can imagine the Chinese whispers effect happening there, right? Where it starts out like this and the message turns
Yeah.
into this. You must have had to have been a super clear communicator in that particular role.
So what I realized was what you're saying, right? All these different departments were operating, and it was quite a big company. They were doing over 100 million in revenue then. And I realized that there was a lack of coordination between the departments because, sales was like, this is supposed to be done by someone else. And then someone else was like, this is supposed to be done by A. And then where I came in was I came in as the middle guy because I was not affiliated with any department. I could be, hey, I'm in no man's land, kind of like Switzerland. And then I'm operating from here. I would like to listen to what your thoughts are, what your processes are. And then I would go to the other side, try to understand that as well. And then try to see how I could get them both together. And that's the strategy I used, and it worked.
So very much a mediator
Yeah,
between teams and trying to be that glue between everyone to get
yeah,
everyone kind of
exactly.
firing on all cylinders.
It can get tense though. It can get tense, especially when, the way I look at businesses or companies are when things are going well, everyone is happy and everything is going well. When things don't go well, that's when everyone is like, oh, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you.
Pointing fingers.
Yeah, pointing fingers. So it could be
Yeah.
quite tricky at times as well. But, all is well that ends well.
So how did you manage that in a particularly rough patch where things are going badly, people are pointing at each other? If you're acting as a bit more of a mediator, how did you overcome those sticky situations?
I think in the end, everyone is moving towards the same vision. We all have the same goal in mind, and it just takes getting everyone down to the negotiating table and letting them know that, hey, you're not fighting for a different cause. It's not a different company. You guys have the same vision. You're moving in the same direction. Let's make this easy for everyone.
Mm.
Sometimes it's often a mix between the carrot and the stick approach, right? Sometimes you dish out the carrot, sometimes the stick comes out.
Yeah, yeah. And I get you've got to have, I guess, the wherewithal, the emotional
Yeah.
intelligence. You've got to be intuitive enough to know whether it's the carrot or the stick to employ, depending on different personalities. I imagine with a company kind of going at that stage, were you also working remotely? Did you have people in different territories as well? So that
I mean,
must
the
have added
main,
another.
yeah, so the main team was in Berlin, but I was still living in Barcelona, and I would fly in every now and then
Wow.
to take care of meetings when needed. I remember there was this intense 1 week period in 2022, actually early in the year when I flew in. And then I had to help this department with SOPs, but there was this new contract that was coming into play. So we were sitting at the office, I think literally from 9 in the morning till 9 in the night, 6 days. It was quite the drill. Like it was literally on smack. But
Wow.
one of those stories you talk about.
In an interview for one day, absolutely. And so, I guess taking a step back for a second here, you mentioned a few times you had your own business in China, which I'd love to hear about as well. You said that that wasn't like a venture backable sort of scale up. You then worked for this like Series B, C, like proper scale up, Berlin, Rome, and Barcelona. And now you've got a venture backable startup. It's only a year old, right? With Flame.
Yeah.
So what have been um can you tell me kind of the best thing and the worst thing from each of those three sort of different company setups?
The reason I'm laughing is right. I'm in this VC-backed startup right now, and you often have a lot of low days. Um, and often you think back to the time, right? I had this business in China. I was making money. We were profitable. Why did I end up leaving that and come all the way here? Uh,
Right.
it's just like one of those fond memories you go back to. So yeah, the let's look at the start from China, right? That's where I was in the first place. Set up this chain of IoT integrated gyms across China. We had 7 locations in total, scaled it to 2.5 million in revenue. We were profitable, we were making money. I could have a salary, which I don't have right now. So I could have a salary, I could pay for my bills. Those were the good old days. I think the advantage was definitely much more control over whatever we were doing, the operations, how things were moving, who we were getting on board. And then I would say the disadvantage on the other side, because of the business model and not having investment, was that we were growing too slowly. Like we were growing at the rate of 1 gym a year, which for me at that point, I was like, this doesn't seem fast enough for me. I'm going to, sell my partnership and then go back and look for something else. Um, the other part was also the business model. We had a retail business model, and it took a huge amount of investment to open a new location every time. I
Mhm.
tried a franchisee model as well, but the same issue. Franchisees also needed to have a lot of money to open the locations. And then that's how I decided to pivot to tech, because I realized that tech is something much more scalable. You can grow it much faster. Then I worked with this startup in Berlin, and I realized that even though it was nice and fancy, one of the things was we had a lot of money, but we had a lot of people as well. And with people came complications, things became slower. We were not moving at the speed we wanted to. And then it culminated in me opening up Flame. And the premise I have behind Flame is what happened with Instagram, right? Instagram was a 13% company which sold for $1 billion. My goal is to grow the company while keeping us as lean as possible. So maximizing quality over quantity. And I mean, I still tell my team right now, like when I still talk with them, I'm like, we're going to try and cap ourselves maximum at 10 people unless absolutely needed. And we should be able to do everything we need to grow within this range. Now, the advantage with the VC-backed business is that, you can grow much faster. You have many more things to do. But one of the not so glorious secrets I realized is that as a founder, you come in, right? And you're a cool founder. If you raise $1 million or anywhere up of that, you don't get the money. Like you're still getting a below market pace, like pay, and then you're trying to survive off that while looking towards the future. Okay, we're going to go and get an A, B, C, D, and then I'll have a bit more money in the bank then. So one of the toughest parts for me with the venture business has been just not having the same lifestyle as I did before with the bootstrap business when we were making money.
Yeah.
um, that was one of the things. The second is also, so you get this pressure. Everything I'm doing right now, I have to consider: will the investors be okay with this? Will not be okay with this? Do I have to face some resistance, etc.?
Yeah. It's so interesting, Ankit. There's loads of different things I want to unpack there, but I want to just commend you and genuinely thank you for bringing up the piece around salaries because more and more we're bringing that conversation of money, finances, salary, all of this to the fore. And I think that this is really helpful to the one day community, to the people who are tuning in now, to realize that actually as a founder, I love what you just said there. It's like you might be making those headlines for securing £5 million in venture capital, but like it's not your money.
Of the money.
You're still, and I get what you're saying as well. When you've got investors breathing down your neck, not only have you got that pressure of, am I doing the right or wrong thing? But for you to potentially go and ask for like a raise or salary when it's like, well, that could be going into building the business. So for clarity, while we're on that interesting topic for the group here, um, when typically does the founder get to enjoy their earn out? Do they have to exit the business? Do they have to be bought out in order to like be very financially secure? Or is there another stage later on where you can afford to take a healthier salary?
Good question, actually. I'm just going to elaborate a bit for the people in the chat who might not be aware. With venture-backed businesses, normally how it operates is, you're locating a product market fit, or what exactly are you selling, and that happens around the pre-seed seed stage. Once you've done that, then you start raising Series A, B, C, which are just bigger rounds in the scope of expansion. So you use that money to grow your business. Maybe you go across the US, then you go international, etc. And from what I've seen with examples with my friends and other people who are in this space, until you're still locating product market fit, which is pre-seed, seed, you're getting enough salary to make sure that you're not just having a can of tuna a day. You can afford a bit more than that. But as you start moving into Series A, B, C, you start also divesting a bit of your own equity in exchange for money in the secondary market, and that's when you start getting a bit of return from your own, investments into the business. And I think then the big check, like you said, Steph, comes when you either IPO or you get acquired. That's when it's like it's a yacht party happening. Everyone is invited. Come on, one day community, let's pack your bags up.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for that breakdown. So you say kind of as the business kind of grows and you're proving you're getting that traction, it then becomes easier, correct me if I'm wrong there, to then kind of demand a bit more of a decent salary. But what level would you say that is? Like before you get to exit, before you get to actually cash out, if you like, what if we use the same labels of rounds in fundraise, what sort of stage can you start to say, okay, I need to be eating more than 2 tins of tuna?
There we go, biceps. I think it would be around the Series B stage when you start demanding an equivalent salary to the market level. And from there, then you start scaling it up. So Series B is roughly when you get a
Yeah.
equal to market
That
salary.
makes sense. In my mind as well, I always think Series B is kind of when you start entering. Series A, B is when you're kind of like, okay, scale up stage now.
Yeah.
It's pre-seed again for the group. Pre-seed seed is a bit more kind of early stage, it's a bit more scrappy sort of startup. And so just for clarity as well, what stage are you at, Ankit? Were you seed with Flame?
We are pre-seed right now. We're going to try and raise a seed round this Q4 of this year.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, fantastic. So
Still,
remind
still 2 cans of tuna.
Still do get right, basically. So convert, let's translate the series rounds into cans of tuna. Are you 1 can of tuna, 2 cans of tuna? Do you know what? Tuna's great for your brain. It's good brain food. So don't knock it. I love that. So going back, I think it's really interesting there when you just sort of took a step back and the other great privilege that we have here to chat with you, Ankit, today is you've got that really valuable experience of those different types of businesses. So you've had your own business in China. I'm curious as to why that was China, so we can come on to that in just a sec. But what you just said there to recap for the audience as well is you had a greater sense of control. You didn't have any investors. It was faster in some ways because kind of smaller team and you could move quite nimbly. But obviously you didn't have that firepower. You saying it was kind of one gym a year, so it wasn't this huge kind of like venture backed. You then sort of went, what my read of it is the pendulum then kind of swung much further in the other direction to go kind of scale up the Berlin company, Series B, C, and you got to see actually how it works with this huge team and actually how all these people slowed things down. And then coming back to you now, pre-seed, VC backed, like startup, you've still got a small team, you've got the money, but it's scalable. So it's kind of like Goldilocks and her porridge. She's found the happy medium in between there. On the team front, I think that's really interesting. That must be music to investors' ears to say want to keep it super lean. How far do you think Flame can grow with just 10 people?
Based on what I know right now about the business, and that's the thing, right? You keep learning and you keep progressing, but based on what I know right now, getting to $1 billion.
Wow, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, there is a lot of with AI, there's a lot of chat about even like one man, one woman band unicorns and just having a team of like AI agents to help them reach that unicorn valuation.
Yeah, exactly. And it reminds me of a quote my CTO told me. So he is a one-man army. Like he has been building the entire product by himself, gets the front end, back end, everything required on the database. And he told me, Ankit, what one engineer can do in 1 month, three can do in 3 months. It's basically like the same amount of work. Like the more engineers you hire, it doesn't become simpler or faster. It's just the
Right.
timeline increases. Three
Right.
people do it in 3 months.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's quite true as well.
yeah, that makes sense. That is super exciting. I love that. Lean, mean, dream machine.
Hopefully.
All right. Well, gang, please pop any questions that you might have for Ankit in the chat. I'll keep going, at least for a few more minutes at least. What did I miss from before, Ankit? There was a point in your story I thought was really interesting. Do you know what? I think actually on the customer acquisition front, let's chat about that while everyone think of some questions you want to ask Ankit, pop them in the chat. But I think we do need to talk about the customer acquisition piece because too often in the startup world, I've done this now, I've fallen victim of this. We tend to focus too much on the investor side of things. We've just been chatting about VC because you've got that perspective of those different types of businesses, which is really insightful and interesting. But no one would be here today if you don't have any customers. So what were some of your earliest growth levers? What were some of the marketing channels that worked for you? How did you find them? And then how did you scale them?
Uh, like I always believe that if there's a founder success story or any kind of success, right, we still have a long way to go, such a long way to go actually. There's always a lot of pain behind it as well. uh, is the no pain no gain
Yeah.
philosophy which comes into play there. Reminds me of last year, right? We launched the product on Valentine's Day, and then we were like, okay, we need to figure out a go to market now. Initially, it was good with the media launches, etc., but we realized that that's not scalable. That's not something you can carry over. So I packed my bags, and my sister also works with me, right? We pack our bags. I ring up my friend in New York initially at that point, and then we're like, hey man, listen, so we don't have a place to stay right now. Okay. And my sister is also coming over. So we don't have a place. Can we sleep on your couch? And he was like, yeah, bro, that's completely fine. But then I've only got one couch. Like, okay, how do we figure this out? So I asked him, do you have a bed sheet? He said, yes. So I put up my sister on the couch. I slept on the ground on the bed sheet. And that's how I spent 3 months
Oh,
back
Ankit,
then.
that's
Yeah,
so sweet.
it makes for a good story though.
Oh,
And basically, what we did is every day we went out on the streets of New York. We were interviewing couples. We were asking other business people, like asking mostly couples as to what was your love story? How did you guys meet? How did this happen? And in
ah,
10 days, we got about 200,000 views on social media, about
wow,
roughly 5,000 followers, and 10 to 20,000 likes or something.
wow.
Um, so we discovered that there was one of the strategies that worked really well, but I got burned out.
Yeah,
I got burned out really badly. I had to go back to India. I was with my family for a month after that, just healing
wow.
back from it. And then we tried a lot of different strategies, right? The thing we realized that worked is building up on with the PR part. We already got this SEO channeling where people were coming and looking for us, and we were getting traffic through that and started looking into it. And we discovered programmatic SEO, which what we're doing is divided a SEO strategy into three different parts. One is short form content, which we are putting up on the website using AI to generate the content. Then there's a long form content in which there's a writer who's writing long blog posts, which are very detailed, very well researched, etc. And then the last one is setting up extra domains, which means we identified which are the top domains. One is couple games, one is no, what are the top keywords, right? Couple games, you've got
Mm,
date night ideas, you've got romantic AI, etc. We
mm.
bought all these domains and we are setting up like actual websites on these domains to drive more traffic to these keywords and then use that traffic to come to a website now.
That's so savvy, Ankit. I'm so happy that I asked you this question. I can't believe I left this towards the end. That's amazing. What a gold mine for people there. So we've got a really practical, tangible SEO strategy. So what's programmatic exactly about the three parts that you just described there? What's the programmatic element?
I think a good question. I think it's a part where what you have to do is you can't just put up a website. Instead, you need to create this whole architecture behind it, which
Yeah,
means that, let's say I'm doing couple games, then I'll pick couple games by location, couple games by indoor outdoor, couple games by I don't know, with other people, etc.
yeah.
Couple games by location would go into more long tail, like couple games in New York, couple games in Boston, couple games in San Francisco, etc. So that's the programmatic part of it.
Yeah, fascinating. So you've got the programmatic SEO, love that. And then, funny enough, with you saying about going on the street and putting microphones in people's faces, asking these questions, again, just today in another founder one-to-one that I had with my cohort, we were talking about this as well, because obviously now, a year later, it's massive. Everyone is doing this. Everyone is going out on the street, putting a microphone in people's faces, and it's really getting all this buzz. But you were ahead of the curve, as always, Ankit. Can I just check, was that TikTok, Instagram, both? Which social channels exactly?
So TikTok we tried putting it on all three channels. It was Instagram, it was TikTok, it was YouTube Shorts, and we were putting out, I think, 3 to 5 videos a day. But
What?
TikTok, it was a lot of work, a lot of work,
Wow, no wonder you burnt out afterwards.
terribly.
3 to 5 a day.
Yeah, but going up
Wow.
to random people on the street, being like, "Hey, are you guys a couple?" I remember the entire script. Like, "Hey, are you guys a couple? Oh, that's so sweet. Tell us a bit more about yourself. Yada yada. Tell us about a fun moment." I remember all the prompt questions we had lined up. Um,
That's hilarious. It's like cemented into your brain now.
exactly.
I'm still processing 3 to 5 a day. I feel like most people are like struggling to do 3 to 5 a week. That is amazing. But no wonder you burnt out, Ankit. I'm really sorry to hear that. I think founder burnout is another super common story. I come across this all the time. Juan, I'm sure you come across this all the time. Founders just going too hard, but you feel the pressure, you want to keep going. So you need to look after yourselves, folks. Okay, we've got a question from, oh, questions are starting to come in now. Perfect. All right, from Madame Lauriane Mounier. What are the best practices you identified? Oh, this is a great one. For improving romantic relationships that could also enhance professional relationships or improve leadership? Lauriane, that is an amazing question. You should be doing my job. That's fantastic.
That's a really good question, actually.
Oh,
No,
great.
I think the top thing I've identified is, I think it boils down to be quite simple, right? But we often forget to do it, communication. Because most of the time in your romantic relationships, issues arise because expectations are not aligned. You didn't communicate properly. People don't know what is expected or what should be given, what should be done, etc. And I feel it's the same for work and leadership as well, right? I mean, a leader who's true and honest, who's quite open with the people who are following the leader, in this case, who communicates properly, usually never faces trouble. Similarly with professional relationships as well. What do you
Mm.
think about that stuff?
Well, I always do pattern matching when I interview, and I'm just connecting it back to your experience in the scale up and how there was that, the more people, the more risk of miscommunication. And like you were saying, when you had to bring everyone back around the negotiating table and remind everyone, we've all got the same vision, we're working to the same thing here, but we need to get them around the table, have that chat, and that's the way we can move forwards. Yeah, I think you know more about that than I do. I would also, if I would add 2 cents to that fantastic question, Lorianne, I would say like a mutual respect is also kind of key element to that as well. So yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things that like you shouldn't need to say out loud. It kind of feels like you're stating the
Sure.
obvious, but maybe it's more of a personal thing as well. But like treat each other with respect, be empathetic, be kind, and again, I think that can translate over into work life as well. Amazing question. Thank you so much. Let's move on to Johnny's question. Do you have any tips for finding customers and making sure you are getting the right data to support your product development? Johnny, that's an amazing question. Uh, Anki, I think I would just connect that to those early days when you went to TechCrunch Disrupt and what the product looked like then. So those people who were engaging in that particular feature that you decided to double down on, how did you know that they were the right ones? How do you go about finding the right customers?
That's a good question, right? So I think the first part of the question is about finding customers. And I think we all go back to Paul Graham's quote on that: do things that don't scare. Like I told you, I was on the streets of New York, like trying to
Right.
interview people, trying to find these guys to come on board, trying to have them download the app as well. These are things that don't scale. I can't get a million users, 2 million users, 10 million users doing that. But initially, sometimes that's what, sorry, that's what works, right? And that's what needed to be done. Also, I think even though it was really hard and I burned out a little bit, I think it taught me a lot about how people were thinking, what they were going through, what they experienced, etc., which is
Mm,
something you can't learn if you're just getting people on through paid advertisement or other channels. So I truly believe like the earlier you are, go and talk with more people, understand more people, get them on board, etc. And then
take
the
that.
second part of the question, yeah. And then regarding finding the right data to support your product development, this is one thing I truly believe in, right? Because you talking with people, you can understand the problem, but to tailor the solution, you need to understand the solution. And one of the best things with the solution is you can actually track what is happening, track what is going through. So I use this service called Mixpanel. They have a fantastic startup program. If any of you wants it, let me know. Basically, what it allows you to do is set up metrics and set up different dashboards. You can track different things happening on the app. So what I would do is one of the things I did is took every single thing in the app and then tried to note down what is the engagement with that particular thing divided by the total daily active users, which means that, let's say, feature one, 100 people are using it out of 1,000 people who come on board. Feature two, 600 people are using it out of 1,000 people. And doing this, I was able to identify what is the thing people are using the most regularly and then double down on that feature.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So just building on that for a second, what are your views on having a super tight customer profile to target? Because in your story, you basically just hit the streets of New York. And I guess that your target when you're out there with the microphone is really anyone who's a couple.
Yeah.
And because you're in New York, obviously there's a load of other connotations that come from that. It's like, okay, well, maybe they're a younger work professional couple, there may be an age range, they can afford to be in the city. So there's kind of like, okay, it's just there. But I guess when you're looking at pure numbers on the metrics dashboard, there isn't anything that's qualitative. There's nothing that's saying we want more of this particular user. It's just looking at the majorities.
I think that's true. But then what we did is, we built an extensive onboarding onto the product. So using the
Mm,
onboarding, we are able to identify like, do you have kids? You don't have kids? How long have you been together? What are your biggest problems, etc. And even though that didn't provide us an exact ICP or ideal customer profile, we were able to hone down, okay, this is the kind of users who are less in a relationship for less than 1 year. They're not married, they don't have kids right now. Some of them are living together, some of them are long distance, etc. That's
yeah.
the measure we used.
Yeah, interesting. So I feel like you had quite an open mind, you had quite a discovery approach. We're essentially, our vision is clear. We want to help couples get the best out of
Yeah.
their relationships. If they happen to be older, younger, with pets, with kids, or whatever, like all that matters is that relationship. Great. All right.
True.
We've got another question from somebody called Juan.
Who's that?
I don't know who this guy is. What is the most important advice you would offer to early stage founders listening to the session? Great question. Everyone's showing me up tonight.
I think one of the top things is, I don't know if it's a quote from Dumbledore in Harry Potter. I think it was actually when he said that, at Hogwarts, ask for help and it shall be given. One of the top advice or things I've realized is just go and ask people. Like some of the best conversations I've had, some of the best investor connections I've made, some of the best customers I've got have been through just going and asking and asking and asking. I also use this little thing which I'm going to try doing more properly now. Every week, find one business leader, could be a top company, could be the CEO of Tinder, could be the CEO of any other company, anyone I respect. Find them, get their email, and send them a personalized email. It's going to take probably 15 minutes every week, but it can lead to great results over time. So send them an email saying that, hey, I really follow your work. I love what you're doing. This is what I'm doing. Would love to have a 10 to 15-minute chat if you ever have the time available, and just start building those relationships, and they can convert at a later stage when you don't even think of them.
Amazing advice. I love that, Anki. Amazing. Yeah, ask for help. That's something I've heard a lot of as well, where people are trying to figure it out on their own. And I feel like there's almost a sense of I need to have earned this. And there's almost this like I need to go through like the hard graft you know, for some people to be like, I've kind of come out the other end, but you just end up, main thing is you end up wasting time. It's just someone else can just say, do this, do that, like point you in the right direction with some things. There are so many WhatsApp groups now. There's amazing communities, like, of course, the Oneday community, you know, use the Slack channels, ask any questions, and just having like, you know, use Mixpanel for your dashboard or an accountant recommendation. Just these things can help save you time so you can focus on what's really important to your business. All right, fantastic. All right, well, there's no more questions. And Anki, I think you've been an amazing guest. I love that we've unearthed all these fascinating insights from your stories. We have had another question come in here. Joseph, last one. So, asking can feel very frightening for the false fear of rejection. Learning to overcome that fear by the belief in your product and, in the end, the belief in yourself. Thank you for that. I needed that. Amazing, Joseph. That's a lovely message.
Just to add to that, like it's 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 scary. I admit it's scary, but then we started a business, man. If you've started a business, then there's not really anything that is much more fearful than that. If
Right.
you decided that okay, you're gonna go and
Right.
you're gonna try and building something in the market and going in and putting it out there, I think that's the most frightening thing. So as long as you've done that, everything else is a easier piece of
I
cake.
love that. Anki, that's such a fantastic. I love that you say that as well because I do see it's such an ironic contradiction. I come across so many entrepreneurs that are so fearful of all these different things. It's like you set up a business, like this is not to ride a merry-go-round with like, you know, sunshine and butterflies. Like, come on, you're a masochist. All right. On that note, before we go any further down the masochist chat, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so, so much for listening, for your time this evening, this morning, this afternoon, depending where you're tuning in from. Please scan the QR code on the screen there. I've popped in the link in the chat. So whichever is easiest for you, we want to get your answers. Quiz time. All right, let's go through each question. So Ankit, how did you hack your first system when you were 12 years old?
There we go. The good old question. Uh, Basically wanted to pick Counter-Strike, so set up a private VPN and then use that to enjoy some good fragging time with my friends.
All
But
right.
yeah, I was
So,
I was pretty bad at Counter-Strike. One, never challenge me, please.
all right, it's option A, everyone. Option A is the right answer there. All right, next question on the quiz. What was the primary reason for the creation of Flame? So, Anki, while you sing your go-to karaoke song, we'll let everyone answer that question before we share the answer.
I mean, you
What
guys
do you
asked
like
for
to
this.
sing at karaoke?
Hey, hey, Dylan, what's it like in New York City? See, they're already done. It works every single time, sir. Every single time.
Love it. I love it.
They're like, stop it, we're done, done.
Guess them doing it. All right. That actually that did come in faster. All right, Ingrid, Joseph, thank you. So the options, Anki, are to create a fun and engaging couples game, to democratize coaching by making it more accessible and reducing the stigma associated with it, or C, to offer online therapy sessions at a lower cost.
The answer is number two.
E2, fantastic. And then last of all, please everyone, rate the event, give us your feedback. We always want to hear your thoughts, what we can do to improve. We really hope you enjoyed this. Anything you didn't get to ask Ankit tonight, please pop them in the community channel on Slack. Ankit, sorry, were you just going to add something there?
I was just going to say that, guys, I've been a part of the startup journey multiple times, and I know that it's tough. It's really tough. And I think, what you were saying about it being frightening to ask for help, what I've realized is when I do that, people are very willing to help because they've been through the same pain. They've been through the same journey, the up and down, right? So on the same front, if I can help with anything, please ask me. I know a little bit about something, and I'm very happy to share that, but also listen to your experiences, what you're going through, what you're dealing with right now. Reach out to me on like the Slack community chat, or if you want, find me on LinkedIn. But I'm very happy to help and share, what I've learned in this process and also learn from you.
That is so, so sweet, Ankit. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, everyone, for the lovely messages. Great to see you all. Ankit, super, super grateful for your time this evening, sharing your incredible story. And let's keep the conversation going on our community Slack.